Let the little children come to me, and do not hinder them, for the kingdom of heaven belongs to such as these. Amidst the chaos and calculations of adult life, the teaching of Jesus Christ rings out gently and intimately, like a cool stream quenching our souls. Let the little children come to me, and do not hinder them, for the kingdom of heaven belongs to such as these. This invitation is not just for literal children, but it is also a profound lesson for each of us. God does not ask us to become naive or foolish. He invites us to rediscover the precious qualities that we have sometimes accidentally lost on our journey to adulthood. A simple soul, an open heart, and absolute trust. Look, a child comes to their parents with open arms, without a hint of doubt, without any calculation. They love purely and accept everything with complete surrender. That is the spirit that God expects from each of His children. Sometimes it is the wisdom, the defensive layers, and the anxieties of adults that become the biggest barriers, preventing us from drawing near to God's loving embrace. He wants us to cast off the burden of pride and complexity, to come to Him with a faith as sincere and humble as a child's. This lesson of smallness and surrender is more deeply engraved through the words of a great saint. Jesus does not demand great actions from us, but only surrender and gratitude. Saint Therese of the Child Jesus. Therefore, each day, let us learn to see life through the eyes of a child, to see the magic in simple things, to trust in God's providence, and to let our souls be truly at peace, for the kingdom of heaven is always open to those with a heart as simple as theirs. This teaching is not just a gentle invitation, but a map guiding the way back to the original purity of the soul. It opens up a treasure trove of life philosophies, not lofty, distant ideas, but simple yet powerful truths, with the power to heal and free us from the burdens of adulthood. Each philosophy below is a stop on that journey of discovery, an opportunity for us to dialogue with ourselves through timeless stories, where God's word resonates in an ancient context, yet feels strangely close. Before we begin, we kindly invite you to take a moment to subscribe to our channel to help spread this valuable content to your family and friends. We thank you, and now we invite you to listen. Pure faith beyond reason. A child's faith comes not from logical arguments or concrete evidence. It comes from absolute trust in the one they love. To enter the kingdom of heaven, our faith needs the surrender of the heart more than the analysis of the mind. It is a leap into the arms of God, believing that He will always be there to catch us. One afternoon, as the sun was setting over the Sea of Galilee, Peter, a seasoned fisherman, looked at the churning clouds in the distance and said to Jesus, "Teacher, my reason and experience tell me a storm is coming. We cannot set sail now. It will be very dangerous." Jesus smiled, looking at a little girl sitting on the sand, carefully placing a dry leaf into a small puddle, believing it to be a great ship. He turned to Peter and said, "Peter, your reason is correct, but that child's faith is stronger than the storm. She believes the leaf will float, and it floats. You believe in your experience, but I want you to believe in the one who masters both experience and storms. Let your faith be as pure as that little girl's, and you will walk on water." 2. True humility is strength. The world values power, status, and self-importance. But in the kingdom of heaven, the greatest is the most humble, the one who knows they are small and completely dependent on God. Humility is not self-deprecation, but placing oneself in the right position before the greatness of God, and that is the source of infinite strength. On the way to Capernaum, the apostles argued among themselves about who was the greatest. When they entered the house, Jesus asked them, "What were you discussing on the way?" Everyone was shut, ashamed. Jesus then called a child playing in the yard, had him stand among them, embraced him and said, "James, John, you want to sit at my right and my left in glory." But look at this child. Does he demand a position? Does he compete for status? He simply exists, plays, and receives love. Whoever wants to be the greatest must become the smallest and serve everyone, as I am embracing this smallness. Humility is the only door to enter the greatness of the kingdom of heaven. 3. A simple soul is a treasure. A simple soul is one untroubled by worries, ambitions, and complex schemes. It is clear, straightforward, and at peace. True wealth lies not in material possessions, but in the serenity of an unburdened heart. A tax collector named Levi, wealthy but always wearing a sorrowful face, came to Jesus by a well. He said, "Rabbi, I have money and houses, but I cannot sleep at night. My heart is heavy with numbers and schemes." Jesus pointed to some children laughing and chasing a butterfly. "Levi, look at their treasure. It's not the silver coins in a purse, but the color of the butterfly's wings. Their joy comes not from possessing, but from beholding. Go and sell your worries, trade them for simplicity, and you will find rest for your soul. Let your heart be as light as that butterfly's wing, instead of as heavy as your money bag." 4. The capacity for wonder at life. Adults often become jaded and take everything for granted. Children are different. They see everything with eyes of first-time wonder. A flower, a raindrop, a star. To retain the capacity for wonder is to maintain a living connection with God through His creations. As they were passing through a field, Andrew grew impatient. "Teacher, we must hurry. It is getting dark. This place is full of nothing but weeds." Jesus stopped and bent down to look at a wild lily by the roadside. A young shepherd boy nearby was also engrossed in gazing at the same flower. Jesus said to Andrew, "You see only weeds, but this child and I see a masterpiece. Look, not even Solomon in all his glory was adorned like one of these flowers. When you stop calling my Father's work weeds and start to wonder at its beauty, you will see the kingdom of heaven right at your feet." 5. Willingness to forgive and start anew. Children may argue and get angry, but a moment later they are playing happily together again, having forgotten everything. They have a natural ability to forgive. Adults hold on to hurts, nurture grudges, and build prisons for themselves. Forgiveness is the act of returning the soul to the state of freedom of a child. A woman caught in adultery was brought before Jesus. The crowd shouted, "According to the law of Moses, she must be stoned." Jesus was silent, writing on the ground with his finger. He looked up and said, "Let any one of you who is without sin be the first to throw a stone at her." They gradually left. Only the woman and he remained. Beside them, 2 children who had just fought over a toy, one hitting the other, were crying. But a moment later, they had their arms around each other, sharing an olive and laughing together. Jesus looked at the woman and said, "Have they all gone? Neither do I condemn you. Look at those children. They teach us the greatest lesson. Life is for moving on, not for condemning. Go now and leave your life of sin. Start over like a child." 6. Being true to oneself. Children do not wear masks. When they are happy, they laugh. When they are sad, they cry without hiding their true feelings. That authenticity makes them beautiful. God does not need empty prayers or hypocritical actions. He desires sincerity from the depths of our being. A Pharisee, standing on a street corner with a pious air, prayed loudly for everyone to hear. He listed his own merits. Not far away, Jesus was talking to a poor widow. Her young son looked at the Pharisee and asked his mother, "Mum, why is he talking to God but looking at people?" Jesus heard and smiled, saying to the woman, "Your son is right. The boy sees a truth that adults do not. God does not hear with ears. He hears with the heart. The sincere whisper of a soul resounds farther than the shout of pride. Always live as truthfully as your son's question." 7. Complete surrender and dependence. A child fully believes that their parents will provide for everything: food, shelter, safety. They live without anxiety because they know they have someone to rely on. The spirit of the kingdom of heaven is to recognize our dependence on God and to entrust our lives to His loving providence. While teaching a crowd, evening approached. The apostles worried, "Teacher, dismiss the crowd so they can go to the villages and buy themselves some food." Jesus asked, "What do you have to eat?" They replied, "Only 5 loaves and 2 fish from a young boy." That boy, without hesitation, gave all of his meager meal to Jesus. He did not calculate that he would go hungry. He just believed. Jesus took the bread, gave thanks, broke it, and gave it to them. Thousands of people ate their fill. Afterward, he said privately to the apostles, "Do you see? The power of the kingdom of heaven lies not in how much you have, but in whether you dare to entrust all you have, no matter how small, into my hands." That boy's surrender fed a multitude. 8. Finding joy in little things. A child's joy doesn't come from big things. A beautiful pebble, a dragonfly, a story is enough to make their whole day joyful. When we rediscover the ability to enjoy simple pleasures, we will see that life is a priceless gift. Martha was busy and worried, preparing a lavish meal to host Jesus. She grumbled because her sister Mary just sat at the Lord's feet, listening to him speak. "Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do the work by myself?" Jesus looked at Martha with a tender gaze. Outside the window, a group of children were cheering with excitement just from chasing their own shadows on the ground. He said, "Martha, Martha, you are worried and upset about many things. You are preparing a great feast, while those children are having a feast with the sunlight. Mary has chosen what is better, peace and joy in the present moment. True joy is not found in what you do, but in your presence." 9. An open heart to receive. A child is a blank slate, ready to receive new things. They are not hardened by prejudice or old experiences. For God's word to soak into our hearts, we need an open attitude, ready to learn, ready to be transformed. Nicodemus, a member of the Jewish ruling council, came to Jesus at night. He said, "Rabbi, we know that you are a teacher who has come from God." Jesus replied, "Very truly I tell you, no one can see the kingdom of God unless they are born again from above." Nicodemus was confused. How can someone be born when they are old? Jesus sighed, "Your knowledge has become a wall. You want to understand me with the mind of an adult. Let your heart be open like a child hearing a story for the first time. Don't ask how, ask what. Be ready to receive the mystery instead of trying to decode it. 10. Living fully in the present moment. Children do not regret the past, nor do they worry about the future. They live fully in the present moment. Their laughter is of the now. Their tears are also of the now. The kingdom of heaven is given to those who know how to live in God's now. As Jesus and his disciples were passing through a village, a man ran up and said, "I will follow you, Lord. But first let me go back and bury my father." Another said, "I will follow you, but first let me go and say goodbye to my family." At that moment, a little girl ran up, tugged on Jesus' robe, and gave him a fig that had just fallen from a tree, smiled brightly, and ran off to play. She made no promises, no delays. She just acted in the present. Jesus looked at the two men and said, "Let the dead bury their own dead. No one who puts a hand to the plow and looks back is fit for service in the kingdom of God." That little girl gave me the most precious gift, her present moment. The kingdom of heaven is not in tomorrow, nor in yesterday. The kingdom of heaven is here, now, in the simplest act of love. 11. Vulnerability as a bridge. Adults learn to hide their weaknesses, considering them flaws. Children, however, express their vulnerability naturally. But it is this fragility, this brokenness, that is the most powerful invitation for others to come close, to love, and to heal. Acknowledged vulnerability does not create distance. It builds bridges of compassion. On a hot afternoon, Thomas was restless, worrying about the uncertain road ahead. But when the other apostles asked, he brushed it off. "I'm not afraid. I'm just calculating the risks." Jesus quietly observed a child who tripped, fell, and burst into tears. Immediately, several other children gathered around, one stroking his head, another offering a wild flower. Jesus turned to Thomas, his eyes gentle. "Thomas, your calculations are building a wall around you, but that child's tears are building a bridge. Do you want to be safe alone in your fortress, or do you want to be loved in a community? Be brave enough to let others see your wounds, for that is where their light can enter." 12. Seeing people with an unprejudiced heart. Children play with each other without distinguishing between the rich and the poor, Jew or Samaritan. They just see a playmate. Prejudice is a disease of adults, created by history, culture, and pride. The kingdom of heaven belongs to those who can look at a person and see only a soul, not a label. When passing through a Samaritan village, the villagers did not welcome Jesus and his disciples. James and John were angry and said, "Lord, do you want us to call fire down from heaven to destroy them?" Jesus rebuked them. A short while later, he was resting under a tree and saw a strange sight. A Jewish boy from their group was sharing half of his bread with a little Samaritan girl. They didn't say much, just ate and laughed together. Jesus called the two brothers over. "You want to call down fire while those two children are sharing life. Your hearts are full of Samaritans and Jews. Their hearts only have friend and bread. As long as you see the world through those prejudices, you are very far from the kingdom of heaven." 13. Natural generosity. The generosity of adults often comes with calculations, giving to receive, to gain a good reputation, to accumulate merit. The generosity of children is pure. They give away their favorite toy just because they want their friend to be happy. Giving without calculation is the very breath of God's love. A rich young man came to ask Jesus how to gain eternal life. After hearing that he had kept all the commandments, Jesus looked at him with love and said, "You still lack one thing. Go, sell everything you have and give to the poor, and then come, follow me." The young man went away sad. At the same time, a poor little girl, after hearing Jesus preach, ran up, pressed her only pomegranate into Matthew's, the treasurer's, hand, and shyly ran away. Matthew said in surprise, "Teacher, it's just a pomegranate." Jesus replied, "That young man could not give up his abundance, but this little girl gave all that she had. This pomegranate, in my Father's eyes, is heavier than the rich man's entire estate." Generosity is not measured by quantity, but by surrender. 14. Quick reconciliation. Conflict is a part of life. Adults tend to nurture discord, turning small scratches into scars that never heal. Children argue, even fight. But 5 minutes later, they are arm in arm, as if nothing happened. The kingdom of heaven is a place of new beginnings, of reconciliation without delay. Peter came to Jesus and asked, "Lord, how many times shall I forgive my brother or sister who sins against me? Up to 7 times?" Jesus answered, "I tell you, not 7 times, but 77 times." Peter was still pondering. Jesus then pointed to the courtyard, where 2 brothers had just been fighting fiercely over a wooden top. The younger one cried, the older one was angry. But then their father came out of the house, said nothing, and just opened his arms. Both children immediately ran into their father's embrace, hugged each other, and forgot everything. Jesus said to Peter, "Don't count the times you forgive. Look at that father's arms. That is the kingdom of heaven. When there is conflict, don't seek who is right or wrong. Seek the way back to the Father's arms, where all things are reconciled." 15. Limitless imagination. Adults are limited by reality. They look at a mustard seed and see only a mustard seed. A child looks at a mustard seed and sees a great tree where the birds of the air can come and perch. A child's imagination is faith in its purest form, the ability to see the potential that God has sown into the smallest of things. The apostles wondered about the kingdom of heaven. They asked, "What is the kingdom of heaven like? Is it as great as the Roman Empire?" Jesus did not answer directly. He told them the parable of the mustard seed. Afterward, he saw a group of children playing with mud. They were building magnificent castles and palaces from their imagination. A boy held up a lump of mud and shouted, "This is the greatest temple." Jesus said to his bewildered apostles, "You want to know what the kingdom of heaven looks like? It is like the lump of mud in that child's hand. To the eyes of an adult, it is worthless, but to the eyes of faith and imagination, it contains a whole kingdom. Do not seek the kingdom of heaven with your physical eyes. Seek it with a sanctified imagination." 16. Honesty with emotions. Society teaches adults to hide their fears and suppress their sadness. But children do not. When they are scared, they cry for help. When they are sad, they weep. This emotional honesty is a form of truth. God wants our true hearts, not a false, brave face. That night, on the boat in the midst of a stormy sea, the apostles panicked when they saw Jesus walking on the water, thinking it was a ghost. Peter, though afraid, said, "Lord, if it's you, tell me to come to you on the water." As he was walking, he saw the strong wind, became afraid, and began to sink. He cried out, "Lord, save me!" After saving Peter, Jesus did not rebuke him for being afraid. He only said, "You of little faith, why did you doubt?" Later, when they were ashore, he told them, "Peter's cry of 'Save me' was a more powerful prayer than the whispers of those who consider themselves strong in faith." Never be ashamed of your fear. Turn it into a cry for help to the Father in heaven, like a child calling for its mother in the dark. 17. Passionate energy for life. Over time, adults become tired and weary. They do everything as a duty. Children are the opposite. They live, play, and learn with a seemingly endless source of energy. That enthusiasm comes from a heart not yet weighed down by the burdens of the world. To live a life of faith is to live fully and passionately, not heavily. On a Sabbath day, Jesus entered a synagogue and healed a woman who had been crippled for 18 years. The synagogue leaders were angry because he healed on the Sabbath. They said to the people, "There are 6 days for work, so come and be healed on those days, not on the Sabbath." Jesus responded to their tired and rigid hearts. "You hypocrites." Afterward, when he went outside, he saw children running, shouting, and playing tirelessly. He said to his disciples, "Those men want to turn the Lord's day into a burden, a list of prohibitions. But look, those children are keeping the Sabbath in the truest sense. They are resting by playing. They are praising God with their laughter. Their energy is the praise that most pleases my Father." 18. Not haunted by failure. A child learning to walk will fall hundreds of times, but they don't see it as failure. They simply get up and try again. Adults are haunted by failure, afraid of mistakes, and often give up too soon. The path to the kingdom of heaven is not for those who never stumble, but for those who are always ready to get back up. After Jesus was arrested, Peter denied him 3 times. When the rooster crowed, he remembered Jesus' words and went outside and wept bitterly. He felt like a complete failure. Many days later, when the resurrected Jesus appeared by the seashore, he did not bring up Peter's failure. Instead, he asked him 3 times, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" After each answer, Jesus gave him a mission: feed my sheep. Nearby, a little boy was trying to build a tower of pebbles. The tower fell down time and time again, but the boy patiently picked up the stones and started over from the beginning. Jesus looked at Peter and nodded toward the boy. "Peter, true love is not never disappointing me. True love is, after every fall, patiently picking up the stones and building again for me, like that little boy." 19. Immediate gratitude. Adults are often grateful only when they receive great things, and sometimes they even forget to say thank you. A child can shout with joy and hug you tightly just for a piece of candy. Immediate and sincere gratitude for the small gifts of life is a language of the kingdom of heaven. Of the 10 lepers healed by Jesus, only one, a Samaritan, returned to give thanks. He threw himself at Jesus' feet and praised God in a loud voice. Jesus asked, "Were not all 10 cleansed? Where are the other 9? At that moment, a mother was giving her little daughter a piece of bread. The girl took it, gave her mother a loud kiss on the hand, and then ate. Jesus saw this and said to his disciples, "The other 9 received a miracle and took it for granted. This Samaritan received a miracle and turned it into thanksgiving. But look at that little girl. She received a piece of bread and turned it into an act of love." Gratitude does not depend on the value of the gift, but on the condition of the heart. Learn to be grateful like that child, and everything in your life will become a miracle. 20. Intimate connection. A child does not exist alone. They are always in relationship with parents, siblings. Connection is their natural need. Adults often pursue independence and autonomy to the point of isolating themselves. Faith is not a solitary journey, but an intimate connection with God and with our brothers and sisters, as a branch is connected to the vine. Jesus used the parable of the vine and the branches to teach his disciples. He said, "I am the vine, you are the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit." The disciples tried to understand its deep theological meaning. But then Jesus pointed to a child clinging tightly to his father's leg, not wanting to leave his side for a moment. Wherever the father went, the child followed. You want to understand what it means to remain in me? Don't overcomplicate it. Look at that child. He doesn't analyze his relationship with his father. He simply clings to him. His connection is instinct. It is love. It is security. Cling to me like that, not with your reason, but with your whole being. That is all I want. Before we continue with today's journey of discovery, we would greatly appreciate it if you could take a moment to leave a comment and share your feelings. If you found this content valuable, please don't forget to hit the share button to spread these positive vibes to your friends and family. And now, let's get back to the program. 21. The ability to play. Play is the most serious work of a child. Through it, they learn, create, and connect. Adults often lose the ability to play. They become too serious and rigid. The kingdom of heaven has room for laughter, joy, and a playful spirit. Holiness does not necessarily come with a frowning face. John the Baptist came, neither eating nor drinking, and they say, he has a demon. The Son of Man came eating and drinking, and they say, here is a glutton and a drunkard, a friend of tax collectors and sinners. Jesus sighed at the judgment of that generation. He said, to what can I compare this generation? They are like children sitting in the marketplaces and calling out to others, we played the pipe for you, and you did not dance. We sang a dirge, and you did not mourn. He pointed to a group of children who were actually playing. They made up their own rules, sometimes pretending to have a wedding, sometimes a funeral, but always filled with laughter. You see, the kingdom of heaven responds to those with a playful spirit. When I play joyful music, dance. When I share sorrow, mourn. Don't stand on the sidelines of life judging those who are participating. Come and play with me. 22. Ceaseless curiosity. A child constantly asks why. Their curiosity is a desire to understand the world. Adults often think they know enough and stop asking questions. A childlike soul is one that never stops being curious about God and His works. After Jesus told a parable, the disciples would often come to Him privately to ask for an explanation. Others would listen and then leave. One day, Jesus said to them, "Blessed are your eyes because they see, and your ears because they hear." Nearby, a boy was sitting and turning over every stone, carefully examining the insects living underneath. He didn't miss a single stone. Jesus pointed to the boy. Your curiosity is the door that leads to blessing. Many people hear my word like walking through a field. They do not stop. But you, like that boy, you turn over every word I say to see what life is hidden beneath. Never lose the question, why? For it is the beginning of all wisdom. 23. Sensitivity to the unseen. Children often sense things that adults do not see. A tense atmosphere in the family, a mother's hidden sadness. They are sensitive to the unseen world of emotions and spirit. To draw near to the kingdom of heaven, we need to cultivate the sensitivity of the heart, not just live by what our eyes see and ears hear. When a man possessed by a demon was brought to them, the disciples could not drive it out. The desperate father came to Jesus. He rebuked their lack of faith and healed the boy. Later, the disciples asked him privately, "Why couldn't we drive it out?" Jesus replied, "This kind can come out only by prayer and fasting." He saw the little daughter of the newly healed man approaching, hugging her father and looking at the disciples with a look of concern. She sensed their powerlessness and shame. Jesus added, "And you also need sensitivity. You only saw the demon. You did not feel the father's pain, the child's fear, or the presence of a weak faith that needed to be supported. Learn to feel the pain before you seek to heal it." 24. Not comparing oneself to others. A child is happy with their toy until they see another child's toy and start to compare. Comparison is the seed of envy and dissatisfaction, a disease of adults. In the kingdom of heaven, each person is a unique creation, with a unique path and a unique grace. Jesus told the parable of the workers in the vineyard. Although they started at different hours, at the end of the day, they all received the same wage. Those who were hired first grumbled and compared themselves to those who were hired last. The owner said, "Are you envious because I am generous?" When the disciples were still discussing fairness, Jesus pointed to the flowers in the field. "Look at these flowers. The lily does not compare itself to the rose. The daisy is not envious of the sunflower. Each flower joyfully displays the unique beauty my Father has given it. You too stop comparing your reward with others, and bloom where I have planted you." 25. Trusting the process. A child building a sandcastle is not overly concerned that the waves will wash it away. Their joy lies in the process of building itself. Adults are too focused on the final result, on the achievement, and often forget the joy of the journey. To live in the kingdom of heaven is to love the path, to trust the process, and not just to focus on the destination. After Peter declared that Jesus was the Christ, the Lord began to speak of the passion he was about to suffer. Peter immediately took him aside and began to rebuke him. "Never, Lord, this shall never happen to you." He only wanted to see the glory, not the cross. He wanted the result without the process. Jesus rebuked him. "Get behind me, Satan. You do not have in mind the concerns of God, but merely human concerns." Afterward, he saw a little girl meticulously weaving a crown of flowers. She was engrossed with each flower, each leaf, her face radiant with happiness. Jesus said to his disciples, "Peter wants the crown of glory now, but this little girl is finding joy in weaving each flower for her crown. Do not be afraid of the process that the Father has set for you, for in the very midst of suffering and trials, you will find the most beautiful flowers for your own crown." 26. Expressing love through concrete actions. A child's love is very concrete. They don't use flowery words. They share their cookie. They offer their hand to be held. They draw a picture. Adults can talk a lot about love, but lack small actions. The invitation of Jesus is an invitation to love in deed, not just in word. At the Last Supper, Jesus washed the disciples' feet. It was a shocking act, the work of a servant. Peter refused. After washing their feet, Jesus said, "Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet." At that moment, outside, the homeowner's young son saw his mother was tired and ran to get a cool cup of water for her. The boy didn't say, "I love you, Mum." He just brought the water. Jesus saw the action through the window and said to them, "Have you seen love? It is not in the titles Lord or Teacher. It is in the bent knee and the basin of water. It is in a child's cool cup of water. Do not just tell each other that you love one another. Go and wash one another's feet." 27. Disregarding vain glory. Children play a game because it's fun, not to be recognized or receive a prize. Reputation, the approval of others, are subtle traps for adults. The kingdom of heaven is for those who act out of pure love, not for the desire of applause. When Jesus sent the 72 disciples out to preach, They returned with joy and said, "Lord, even the demons submit to us in your name." Jesus shared their joy, but immediately reoriented them. "However, do not rejoice that the spirits submit to you, but rejoice that your names are written in heaven." He saw some children having a running race. Some came in first, some last, but they all grinned and hugged each other. There were no medals, no podium, just the joy of running together. He continued, "Do not let your joy come from defeating demons or being praised by the world. That is temporary joy. Be joyful like those children. Their joy comes from running together on my Father's path and knowing that their names are in his heart. That is true glory." 28. Security in love. A child can sleep soundly through a storm, as long as they are in their parents' arms. Their security comes not from external circumstances, but from the presence of love. Adults seek security from money, power, insurance. The peace of the kingdom of heaven comes from knowing that we are always in God's arms, no matter how stormy the world may be. On the boat, a furious storm came up, and the waves broke over the boat, but Jesus was in the stern, sleeping. The disciples were terrified and woke him, saying, "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?" Jesus got up, rebuked the wind and the waves, and it was completely calm. Then he asked them, "Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith?" Later, in a home, he saw a similar scene. Thunder and lightning raged outside, but a baby slept soundly in its mother's arms. Its face was completely peaceful. He said to his disciples, "Do you see the difference? On the boat, you were with me, but you believed in the storm. This child is in the midst of the storm, but believes in its mother's arms. Peace is not the absence of the storm. Peace is the presence of my Father, right in the eye of the storm." 29. Living with hope. For a child, every morning is a new adventure. They wake up with the belief that good things will happen today. Disappointment and cynicism are the baggage of adults. Hope is the atmosphere of the kingdom of heaven, the ability to look to the future with faith in God's goodness, even when the present is bleak. After Jesus' death, the disciples locked themselves in a room, fearful and desperate. The future was closed to them. When the resurrected Jesus appeared to them, his first words were, "Peace be with you." He brought hope back to the most hopeless place. Nearby, on the streets of Jerusalem, despite the mournful atmosphere, a little girl was diligently planting a seed in a crack in the stone pavement. She believed it would grow. The risen Jesus said to his stunned disciples, "The world crucified me and thought that was the end. You believed so too. But my Father, like that child, can sow life in the driest of places. Never stop hoping, for hope is the seed of the resurrection." 30. Knowing oneself as a beloved child. The foundation of all the above philosophies is a single truth: knowing that you are an unconditionally loved child. A child acts freely and joyfully because they know they are loved. Adults try to work to be worthy of love. The kingdom of heaven is not a reward for effort, but a gift to the children who recognize their Father's love. When Jesus was baptized in the Jordan River, a voice came from heaven. "This is my Son, whom I love. With him I am well pleased." This was the affirmation of his identity before he began any ministry. The Father's love precedes action. One day, while teaching, a father held his young child in his arms. The child did nothing, simply rested there, head on his father's shoulder. The father's face was filled with love. Jesus stopped, pointed to them, and said to the crowd, "Many of you are trying to work to make God love you. You fast, you pray, you give alms, and hope the Father in heaven will be pleased. But you have it backward. Look at that child. Does he do anything to be loved? No. He is loved simply because he is a son. Before you do anything, let the Father's voice sink into your souls. You are my beloved child. When you live with that horizontal truth, everything you do will no longer be a burden, but a song of love. 31. Freedom from the past. Adults are often prisoners of the past. They are bound by mistakes, regrets, and old wounds. Children live in a continuous series of present moments. Each day for them is a completely new beginning. Freedom from the burden of yesterday is the essence of God's mercy, a mercy that is new every morning. A woman with a sinful past, shunned by the whole city, came to Jesus at a well. She dared not look up, whispering, "Teacher, my past is like a ghost that won't let me go. Every look I get is a judgment." Jesus pointed to a little boy who had just scraped his knee. The boy cried loudly, was comforted by his mother, and just a few minutes later was laughing brightly, chasing a grasshopper, seeming to have completely forgotten the painful fall. He said to the woman, "Look at that boy. Where does his painful fall exist? In the past. What is his present? Joy, my Father is the same. He does not remember the sins he has forgiven. Only you and those around you are trying to hold on to a ghost that has long since vanished. Leave your past behind and walk in the freedom of today." 32. Direct perception, not through a lens. Adults see the world through many lenses: ideology, experience, prejudice. They analyze and interpret everything. Children have a wonderful ability to see things as they are. A flower is a flower, not a symbol of something else. Seeing the world with direct, non-judgmental eyes is the shortest path to truth. The disciples and the scribes were arguing heatedly about the meaning of the Sabbath. One quoted the law, another offered complex interpretations. The debate was long and endless. Jesus led them outside, where a little girl was sitting under a fig tree. He asked her, "What are you doing?" The girl looked up, her eyes clear, and replied, "I'm resting. The sun is beautiful and the breeze is cool." Jesus turned to the debaters. "You argue about the Sabbath. This little girl is living the Sabbath. You try to define rest, while she simply rests. You are lost in words, while she finds God in the sunshine and the breeze. Which of you truly understands the meaning of today?" 33. A simple sense of justice. When a child exclaims, "That's not fair," it is often a pure reaction to wrongdoing, unaffected by personal gain or complex reasoning. This nascent sense of justice, before being complicated by society, is very close to God's law of love. In the temple courts, Jesus overturned the tables of the money changers and the benches of those selling doves, saying, "My Father's house is a house of prayer, but you have made it a den of robbers." The chief priests and the teachers of the law were furious at his actions, but the children in the temple shouted, "Hosanna to the Son of David!" An annoyed scribe said to Jesus, "Do you hear what these children are saying?" Jesus replied, "Yes. Have you never read, 'From the lips of children and infants you have ordained praise'?" He added to his disciples, "The scribes see this commerce as necessary for the temple. You see it as a violation of the law. But these children, they see one simple thing. Animals trapped in cages is wrong, and turning the Father's house into a marketplace is not fair. Their hosannas are the voice of justice." 34. The beginner's mind. The experienced often act with the confidence, sometimes arrogance, of an expert. A child approaches everything for the first time, with openness, curiosity, and no fear of being wrong. This beginner's mind is a necessary condition for learning the new things of the kingdom of heaven, where worldly experience is sometimes an obstacle. Nicodemus, a master in Israel, was still confused about being born again. He came to Jesus once more. "Teacher, I have spent my whole life studying the scriptures. How can I abandon all that I know to start over?" Jesus pointed to a potter teaching his son. The boy held the clay for the first time, clumsy but full of eagerness, following his father's instructions. The clay was misshapen, but the boy smiled brightly. Nicodemus, the potter's son, does not say to his father, "I already know." He happily ruins the first lump of clay. You are afraid to let go of the perfect pot you think you have already made. But my Father does not need old pots. He needs soft clay in his hands. Come to him like a child learning a trade for the first time, and he will create a new masterpiece in you. 35. Comfort with mystery. Adults have a need to explain everything. They are uncomfortable with what they don't understand. Children are very comfortable with mystery. They accept that there are things beyond their comprehension without worrying. To live in faith is to be at peace with the mysteries of God, instead of trying to analyze them into formulas. After the feeding of the multitude, the people wanted to make Jesus king, but he spoke to them of the bread of life, of eating his flesh and drinking his blood. Many, including some disciples, said, "This is a hard teaching. Who can accept it?" And they left. Jesus turned to the 12 and asked, "You do not want to leave too, do you?" Peter, on behalf of the group, did not say, "We understand." He only said, "Lord, to whom shall we go? You have the words of eternal life." At that moment, Jesus saw a little girl looking up at the starry night sky. She did not ask how the stars were made or how far away they were. She was simply in awe of their beauty. Jesus whispered to John, "Peter's answer and that little girl's gaze are one and the same. It is surrender before a mystery greater than oneself. That is faith." 36. Initial trust in adults often approach strangers with suspicion and defensiveness. Children are the opposite. They tend to trust others until there is evidence to the contrary. This initial trust in the goodness of others, while sometimes seeming naive, is the very material that builds community and brotherhood. Zacchaeus, the tax collector hated by all of Jericho, climbed a sycamore fig tree to see Jesus. When Jesus arrived, he looked up and called, "Zacchaeus, come down immediately. I must stay at your house today." The crowd muttered, "He has gone to be the guest of a sinner." They approached Zacchaeus with condemnation, but a child in the crowd, not knowing who Zacchaeus was, shouted, "Wow, that man is great at climbing trees." He approached Zacchaeus with admiration. After Zacchaeus declared his repentance, Jesus said to the crowd, "You look at Zacchaeus and see a sinful past. I look at him and see a saved future." But that child, he sees neither past nor future. He just sees a person. It was his initial, non-judgmental trust that opened the way for my mercy. 37. Daring to speak. Truth to power. Children lack the social filter that makes adults afraid to speak the truth, especially to those in power. Their innocent observations can shatter the sophisticated veneers of hypocrisy. This is the emperor's new clothes effect in the spiritual life. Jesus was dining at the house of a Pharisee named Simon. The feast was lavish, but the atmosphere was cold and judgmental. A woman in that town who lived a sinful life came, weeping, and began to wash Jesus' feet with her tears, then poured perfume on them. Simon thought to himself, "If this man were a prophet, he would know who is touching him and what kind of woman she is." Simon's young son, observing everything, asked his father in a loud voice, "Daddy, why is that lady crying? Does she love this guest very much?" The question silenced the room. It bypassed all judgments about sin and went straight to the heart of the matter. Love. Jesus placed his hand on the boy's head and said to Simon, "Simon, your son has just spoken the truth you refuse to see. You see only sin, but he sees love. Sometimes God uses the mouths of children to remind the wise of what truly matters." 38. The importance of touch. In an increasingly disconnected world, adults often forget the healing power of physical touch. Children live by it. A hug, a hand to hold, a reassuring pat. They crave and give closeness naturally. God's love is also a love that wants to touch us, to become incarnate, and invites us to touch one another. People were bringing little children to Jesus for him to place his hands on them and pray for them. The disciples rebuked them, but Jesus said, "Let the little children come to me." And he took them in his arms, placed his hands on them, and blessed them. A scholar in the crowd wondered, why must he touch them? Is his blessing not enough? Jesus answered, "Words fly away, but a touch remains. My Father did not just say he loved the world, he touched the world through my coming here. You too, do not just speak loving words. Take a hand, embrace a shoulder. For in that touch, the kingdom of heaven becomes visible." 39. Contagious joy. When a child is happy, they don't keep it to themselves. They run to show it off. They laugh out loud. They want everyone to be happy with them. The joy of adults is often quiet and internal. The joy of the kingdom of heaven is contagious. It is a fire that wants to spread to others. After healing the 10 lepers, only one returned. He came back, praising God in a loud voice. His joy could not be contained. Jesus said to his disciples, "This is what the joy of salvation is like. It cannot be swamped." He pointed to a little girl who had just been given a small bunch of grapes by her mother. She didn't eat them alone. She ran immediately to the other children, giving each one a grape, and they all cheered together. You see? True joy is not about possessing, but about sharing. When you feel the grace of my Father, do not keep it for yourselves. Go and proclaim the good news, not with long sermons, but with an unconcealable joy, a joy as contagious as those children's. 40. The absence of cynicism. Cynicism is a disease of a tired soul. It is the result of disappointments and brokenness. People stop believing in promises, in the goodness of others. Children, by nature, are creatures full of trust. They believe in promises. To live in the kingdom of heaven is to restore the ability to trust in God's promise, despite the world's contrary evidence. When Jesus spoke of the resurrection, even his closest followers were skeptical. Thomas demanded to see the nail marks and put his hand into his side. The disciples on the road to Emmaus said sadly, "We had hoped." But Jesus, after his resurrection, patiently appeared to them. One day, he saw a father playing with his son. The father held out his arms and said, "Jump, I'll catch you." The boy, without a moment's hesitation, jumped from a high step into his father's arms. Jesus said to Thomas, "Thomas, you demand proof because you have let the world teach you cynicism. That boy jumps because he knows only one thing. His Father loves him. I invite you also to jump into faith like that. Believe in my promise, not because it is logical, but because you know who I am." Before we continue with today's journey of discovery, we would greatly appreciate it if you could take a moment to leave a comment and share your feelings. If you found this content valuable, please don't forget to hit the share button to spread these positive vibes to your friends and family. And now, let's get back to the program. 41. Movement as prayer. Adults often pray in stillness and solemnity. Children pray with their whole bodies. A dance, a joyful leap, a race can all be pure praises offered to God. The vibrancy of the body is a form of worship we have forgotten. King David once danced before the Ark of the Covenant and was despised by his wife Michal. Centuries later, in the temple court, the devout stood still, mumbling solemn prayers. But Jesus paid attention to a group of children. After hearing a Levite blow a horn, they began to dance, to spin, their faces radiant. They followed no choreography, simply expressing joy through movement. A Pharisee frowned. How noisy and irreverent. Jesus replied, "Do you think my Father is pleased only with solemn whispers? Do you think worship happens only in silence? Look, the most living prayer in the temple right now is not your mumblings, but the dancing of those little feet. They are worshipping with their entire lives." 42. Creating for the joy of creation. Adults create for a purpose: to sell, to be recognized, to be useful. Children create simply for the joy of making something new. A scribbled drawing, a house made of leaves. They are acts of pure creation, reflecting the image of God, the Creator who creates out of love. The disciples were marveling at the complexity and engineering of the temple in Jerusalem. They pointed to the massive stones, the intricate carvings. Jesus told them that not one stone would be left on another. Later, while resting by a river, he saw a little girl carefully arranging colorful pebbles into the shape of a flower on the sand. She was completely absorbed in her work. When she finished, she looked at it, smiled with satisfaction, and then a small wave came and washed it all away. She didn't cry, but just laughed and started making another shape. Jesus said to his disciples, "People built that temple with pride and the desire for it to last forever. This little girl creates only for the joy of the moment. Her work is washed away, but the joy remains." The kingdom of heaven is not built with stone, but with such moments of creative love. 43. The wisdom of the body. Adults often ignore the signals of their bodies. They eat when they're not hungry, work when they're exhausted, because reason and schedules demand it. Children live in harmony with their bodies. They eat when hungry, sleep when tired. Listening to and respecting the legitimate needs of the body is also a form of divine wisdom. Jesus and his disciples had traveled a long and tiring journey. When they reached a well in Samaria, the disciples hurried into town to buy food. Jesus sat down to rest. When the Samaritan woman came, he asked her for a drink. When the disciples returned with food, they found him in deep conversation. They urged him to eat, but he replied, "I have food to eat that you know nothing about." He did not deny his physical needs, but he showed there was a harmony. Later, he said quietly to John, "You rushed to find food and forgot your fatigue. I sat down to rest and listened to my thirst, and it was that thirst that led me to a thirsty soul. Learn to listen to your bodies, because sometimes, through hunger, thirst, and fatigue, my Father is trying to tell you something." 44. Comfortable with silence. Adults often feel awkward in silence. They try to fill the void with conversation, with noise. Children can sit next to each other in comfortable silence, each pursuing their own thoughts but still feeling connected. The silence in the kingdom of heaven is not emptiness, but a space full of presence. Mary sat at Jesus' feet, listening quietly. Her sister Martha was bustling about, creating all sorts of noise and stress. Martha complained. Jesus replied, "Mary has chosen what is better." Then he pointed to the courtyard, where two small children were sitting side by side on a step. They weren't talking. One was watching an ant crawl. The other was watching a cloud. They were completely at peace. Jesus said to Martha, "You think love must be expressed through noisy service. But sometimes the deepest love lies in shared silence." Those two children are completely present to each other without a single word. Mary is with me in the same way. Learn to cherish silence, for in it you will hear my voice more clearly. 45. Not afraid to get dirty. Children are not afraid of getting dirty. Mud and dust are part of their world. Adults are often afraid of being dirty, both literally and figuratively. They are afraid of getting involved with people and situations considered unclean. Jesus, like a child, did not hesitate to get dirty to reach those rejected by society. When Jesus healed a leper, he reached out his hand and touched the man. This act, according to the law of Moses, made him ritually unclean. The Pharisees were horrified. They questioned his disciples, "Why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners?" At that moment, a group of children were playing after a rainstorm. They were jumping in puddles, covered in mud, but their laughter was pure. Jesus pointed to them and said to the Pharisees, "You are afraid of mud because you think it will make you dirty. These children see mud as part of the fun. You are afraid that sinners will defile your holiness. But I see that my Father's love is like the rain. It falls not to avoid the mud, but to wash it away. To heal the world, you cannot be afraid of getting dirty." 46. A sense of home. A child always has a place called home to return to, a place of safety and belonging. This deep sense of home is an image of the deepest spiritual longing of humanity, the longing to return to the Father's house. The prodigal son, after going far away, decided to return. His motivation was not a theological concept, but a very concrete memory. How many of my father's hired servants have food to spare? He remembered home. When Jesus told this parable, some found the Father's easy forgiveness hard to understand. He pointed to a little boy crying because he was lost from his mother in the crowd. When the mother found him and hugged him, his crying immediately turned into absolute peace. Jesus said, "You question the logic of forgiveness. But look at that boy. His mother's arms are the only logic he needs. That feeling of being home is stronger than any sin, any lostness. The kingdom of heaven is not a reward for the good, but home for the children who know the way back." 47. Simple loyalty. The loyalty of adults is often complex, conditional. The loyalty of a child to their best friend is simple and fierce. "You are my friend." Period. The spirit of the kingdom of heaven requires an uncalculated loyalty to Jesus, a strong bond that endures all trials. After Jesus spoke of the bread of life and many disciples left, he asked the 12, "You do not want to leave too, do you?" Peter's answer, "Lord, to whom shall we go?" was an expression of this loyalty. Later, in another context, Jesus saw two children playing together. An older child was bullying one of them. His best friend, though smaller, stood up to protect him, saying, "Don't bully my friend." Jesus smiled and said to his disciples, "Loyalty does not require strength or wisdom. It only requires love." That child did not calculate whether he could win against the bully. He only knew he had to stand by his friend. When the world opposes me, will you dare to stand up and say, "Don't bully my teacher"? 48. Receiving love as the foundation. A child's main task in their early years is to receive love. Being fully loved creates a secure foundation for their entire life. It is the same for us. Before we can love others, our first task is to learn how to open our hearts to receive the infinite love of God. A teacher of the law asked Jesus which commandment was the most important. He answered about loving God and loving neighbor. The man nodded, but Jesus knew he was still approaching it as a task to be done. He told a short story. There was a dry well. The owner tried to draw water from it but got nothing. He became angry and wanted to fill it in. But then a great rain fell and filled the well. From then on, the well could provide water for the whole village. He concluded, "Your soul is like that well. Do not try to draw love from your own dryness to offer to God or others. Let the rain of my Father's love fall and fill you first." A child does not try to love their parents. They simply receive their love. Start there. 49. Transparency of the soul. In a child, what is inside is often visible on the outside. Joy, sadness, anger are not hidden. This transparency, while sometimes inconvenient for adults, is a virtue of the kingdom of heaven. God desires souls with no hidden corners, no secret intentions. Jesus said to his disciples, "The eye is the lamp of the body. If your eyes are healthy, your whole body will be full of light." They didn't quite understand. He pointed to a burning oil lamp and a child sitting nearby. Look at that lamp. It does not hide its light. And look at this child. When he is happy, his whole face is a smile. When he is sad, his whole being is sadness. His soul is as transparent as that flame. I want you to be the same. Let there be no difference between the person you are on the inside and the person you show on the outside. Let your light shine authentically. 50. The logic of love, not the logic of law. A child obeys their parents not because they understand all the rules, but because they love and trust them. Their logic is the logic of love. Adults are often trapped in the logic of rules, of fairness, of right and wrong. The kingdom of heaven operates on a higher logic, the logic of love and mercy. The parable of the merciful father, the prodigal son, is a perfect example. The older brother operated on the logic of law and fairness. "Look, all these years I've been slaving for you, yet you never gave me even a young goat." The father did not argue with that logic. He only replied, "My son, you are always with me. But we had to celebrate and be glad, because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found." Jesus, after telling this parable, saw that the older brother from the parable was still present on the faces of many Pharisees. He turned to a mother, comforting her child who had just fallen. The child had disobeyed and run into the street. But the mother did not punish. She just held him in her arms. Jesus said, "The older brother wants justice. This mother wants her child to be safe. Your logic asks, does he deserve to be forgiven? My Father's logic asks, is he my child?" Abandon the logic of law to learn the logic of love, for that is the only language spoken in my Father's house. 51. The weight of words. In a world full of empty promises and casual remarks, children remind us of a time when words had a sacred weight. A promise was absolute. A name held magic. In the kingdom of God, language regains its integrity and its creative power. Yes means yes, and no means no. The disciples were discussing oaths, a common habit to make one's words more trustworthy. Jesus taught them not to swear at all. He said, "All you need to say is simply yes or no." To illustrate, he pointed to a father speaking to his little daughter. "I promise I'll make you a kite tomorrow." The little girl's face lit up with absolute belief. Jesus said to his disciples, "To that little girl, her father's promise is an unshakable truth, heavier than the gold in the temple. You try to use oaths to make your words heavy. But I want your words themselves, by their very nature, to have the weight of truth, just like that promise." 52. Seeing the person, not the function. Adults often see others through their function. The carpenter, the fishmonger, the tax collector. Children have the ability to see through those labels to the person. They see Mr. Simon, and not just the fisherman. The kingdom of heaven belongs to those who can see a soul behind a social role. When Jesus called Matthew, who was sitting at the tax collector's booth, the other disciples initially kept their distance. In their eyes, he was a tax collector, a collaborator with Rome. During the meal at Matthew's house, the young son of one of his friends approached Peter and asked, "Are you the man who goes on the boat with Jesus? I love the sea." The boy didn't ask, "Are you an apostle?" He just saw a man connected to the sea. Peter was surprised and smiled involuntarily. Jesus later said to him, "Peter, you look at Matthew and see a function you dislike. That boy looks at you and sees a story he loves. As long as you see each other through titles, you are still building walls. Learn to see each other like children, and you will see bridges." 53. The power of naming. A child names her doll, her teddy bear, and in doing so gives them an identity, a unique existence in her world. This act of naming deeply reflects the power of God, who called Abraham by name, changed Simon's name to Peter, and has called each of us by name from before all time, giving us a unique mission. When Jesus sent his disciples out to preach, he called each one by name and gave them authority. Later, when they returned, he told them to rejoice because your names are written in heaven. They still didn't fully understand the meaning. He pointed to a little girl holding a lame lamb. She was whispering to it, "You will be courageous, because you will walk again." She had given the lamb a name full of hope. Jesus said, "Naming is not a simple act. It is a declaration of faith. That little girl doesn't call the lamb Lame One. She calls it by the name it will become. My Father is the same. He doesn't call you sinner. He calls you by the name written in heaven, the name of holiness you are called to become." 54. No plan B. When children trust, they trust completely. They don't have a plan B in case their parents break a promise. Their surrender is absolute. Faith in the kingdom of heaven also demands an unreserved commitment, a letting go of all safety nets to trust completely in God's providence. When Jesus called his first disciples, they immediately left their nets and followed him. They didn't say, "Let me go and arrange my affairs, find a replacement, then I will follow you." Later, someone came to him and said, "I will follow you, but first let me go and take care of things at home." Jesus replied, "No one who puts a hand to the plow and looks back is fit for service in the kingdom of God." He saw a boy playing catch with his father. The father said, "Throw it high, I'll catch it." The boy closed his eyes and threw the ball as high as he could, completely trusting his father's word. He never considered the possibility that his father might miss. Jesus said to his disciples, "That boy doesn't throw reservedly. He has no plan B in case the ball drops. Your faith must be the same. Don't follow me with one foot still at home, one hand still holding the net. Give me everything, and you will see the power of my Father's arms." 55. Learning by osmosis. Children don't just learn through direct teaching. They learn by osmosis. They breathe the atmosphere of the family, absorbing the values, attitudes, and beliefs of those around them. This shows the supreme importance of building a community of faith, a spiritual family, where the Word of God is lived and spread naturally. Jesus often spoke with his disciples as a family. He ate with them, walked with them, shared everything with them. One day, someone came and reported, "Your mother and brothers are outside, wanting to see you." Jesus looked at his disciples and those listening to him and said, "Here are my mother and my brothers, for whoever does the will of my Father in heaven is my brother and sister and mother." He saw a child sitting on a carpenter's lap, watching his father work intently. The boy wasn't being taught a lesson, but he was breathing in the smell of wood, feeling the rhythm of the saw, and learning to love his father's work. Jesus said to them, "I don't just want you to know my teachings. I want you to absorb me. Stay close to me. Live in this community, so that the spirit of the kingdom may soak into you like the smell of wood soaks into that child." 56. The honesty of and the pain of adults is often suppressed, analyzed, or concealed. The pain of children is whole and pure. When they are sad, they cry their hearts out. When they are in pain, they scream. This absolute honesty in pain is a form of prayer, a genuine lament that God never ignores. At Lazarus's tomb, Martha spoke to Jesus in the language of theology. "I know he will rise again." Mary said nothing, just came and wept at his feet. The Bible records that Jesus was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. He saw Lazarus's little niece also standing there, tears streaming down her face, not trying to be strong. Jesus said to the disciples who were trying to offer awkward comfort, "You try to use words to soothe pain, but sometimes pain does not need an explanation. It needs companionship. The tears of Mary and of that child are the most honest prayers right now. Do not be afraid of your pain. Bring it to me in its fullness, and I will be there in it with you." 57. Tears as a language. When words fail, tears speak. Children instinctively use tears to express what they cannot say: fear, hurt, joy, emotion. God, who sees into every soul, completely understands this wordless language. Peter, after denying the teacher 3 times, went outside and wept bitterly. That was all he could do. His repentance was not expressed in a speech, but in tears. Jesus, when he met him again by the lake, did not demand a formulaic apology. He only asked about love. Later, recounting the story, John said to the faithful, "Do not think that God only hears carefully arranged prayers. He hears your choked sobs as well." He remembered once seeing Jesus holding a sobbing orphan. He didn't say much, just remained silent and let the child cry on his shoulder. John understood that the Lord's embrace was the answer to a language that only the heart can understand. 58. The capacity to be delighted. Happiness is often a state, but delight is an immediate reaction, a joyful surprise at something unexpected. Children are very easily delighted. A ladybug, a rainbow, a funny face can make them laugh with pleasure. The kingdom of heaven belongs to those who retain the ability to let God delight them every day. The disciples were often worried about big things. When the kingdom would come, who would sit in the highest place, how to get enough food. One day as they were walking, a strong wind blew, sending poppy petals flying up in a red dance. The disciples didn't notice. They were still arguing. But Jesus stopped and smiled. He saw a little girl also standing there, eyes wide, grinning, and clapping her hand at the flying petals. She was being delighted. Jesus said, "You are so busy looking for great signs from heaven that you miss the thousands of little signs my Father displays before your eyes every day. Let your souls be as light as that little girl's, so that a breeze, a flower petal can delight you. For that joy is a glimpse of heaven." 59. Faithfulness to friends. The loyalty of adults can be swayed by self-interest, by fear, by social pressure. Children have a simple and fierce faithfulness to their friends. They protect their friends, share with their friends, and stand by their friends unconditionally. This spirit of friendship is an image of the community of believers who are called to be faithful to one another and to the Lord. When Jesus was arrested, all the disciples fled. It was a failure of faithfulness. But in the crowd that followed him to the high priest's house was John, the disciple whom Jesus loved, who followed to the very end. Later, reflecting on this, John remembered a childhood image. He and his brother James once had a close friend who was being teased by older children. Though they were scared, they both stood by their friend. John wrote in his letter, "Let us love one another, for love comes from God." He understood that this love was not an abstract feeling. It was a concrete faithfulness, a decision to stay when others flee, just like best friends who never abandon each other. 60. The rhythm of play and rest. Adults often live in two extremes, either working to exhaustion or resting in idleness. Children have an instinctive wisdom about rhythm. They play with all their might, and when they are tired, they rest completely, and then they play again. A healthy spiritual life also needs a harmonious rhythm between passionate effort, play, and trusting rest in God, rest. After a tiring preaching tour, the disciples returned to Jesus. He said to them, "Come with me by yourselves to a quiet place and get some rest." But the crowds ran ahead and got there before them. Jesus had compassion on them and began teaching them again. However, later, when he saw the disciples were truly exhausted, he took them in a boat to the other side. On the boat, he fell asleep. Nearby, some fishermen's children did the same. After helping their fathers pull in a small net, they chased each other along the shore, then lay down on the sand and slept soundly in the shadow of a boat. Jesus said to them, when they reached the other side, "Never underestimate rest. It is as holy as work. Work for my Father with all your strength, like those children play, and rest in my Father's arms with all the same trust as them." Before we continue with today's journey of discovery, we would greatly appreciate it if you could take a moment to leave a comment and share your feelings. If you found this content valuable, please don't forget to hit the share button to spread these positive vibes to your friends and family. And now, let's get back to the program. 61. The seriousness of a promise. For an adult, a promise can be broken for valid reasons. For a child, a promise, especially a solemn promise, is an inviolable covenant. This absolute seriousness reflects the nature of the covenant God made with his people. A promise never revoked, a faithfulness that endures forever. When speaking of the new covenant at the Last Supper, Jesus took ordinary bread and wine and turned them into an eternal promise. "This is my body. This is my blood, the blood of the new covenant. The disciples were still confused. Jesus saw two children exchanging something. One gave the other a beautiful pebble, and the other said, "I promise I'll keep it forever." The way they said the word promise was full of solemnity and seriousness. Jesus said to them, "You see, for them that promise turns the pebble into a treasure. My promise is the same. It turns this bread into my very life. Receive my promise with the seriousness of a child, and it will transform your lives." 62. Asking for help. Without hesitation. The ego of adults often prevents them from asking for help, especially for small things. They are afraid of being seen as weak or a nuisance. A child who can't tie their shoelaces will run straight to an adult and hold out their foot without any hesitation. The ability to ask for help so innocently is a virtue of the kingdom of heaven, where we recognize our complete dependence on God and on each other. The Canaanite woman, though tested by Jesus with seemingly harsh words, persisted in her plea, "Lord, help me." She did not let her pride stand in the way. Jesus praised her faith. Later, he saw a disciple, Judas, not Iscariot, struggling to fix a broken sandal strap. He tried to do it himself and was getting frustrated. A little boy saw this, ran over, pointed to a nearby leather worker, and said, "Mister, that man can fix it." Jesus came to Judas and said, "Why are you struggling alone? That boy is wiser than you. He knows that the solution sometimes lies with someone else. Do not let your ego prevent you from receiving grace. Learn to say please help as simply as a child." 63. The world as a gift. Adults tend to see the world as a resource to be exploited, an object to be conquered, or a problem to be solved. Children experience the world as a gigantic gift, ever new and full of surprises, something given, not taken. This spirit is the foundation of gratitude and respect for God's creation. When the disciples asked Jesus how to pray, he taught them the Lord's Prayer, which includes the line, "Give us today our daily bread." This petition implies that everything we have is a gift given daily, not an entitlement. Later, as they passed through an olive grove, he saw a little girl picking up fallen olives. She didn't climb the tree to pick them, but joyfully received what the ground offered. She kissed an olive before putting it in her basket. Jesus said, "People look at an olive tree and calculate how much oil it will produce, how much money it will sell for. This little girl looks at the olive tree and receives its gift with gratitude. Learn to live in the world as this little girl is in the garden. Receive each day as a gift, not as something you deserve." 64. Comfortable with smallness. The world craves greatness. People want to be big, important, influential. A child is completely comfortable with their own smallness. It is their natural state. Smallness is not a deficiency, but a condition for being held, protected, and loved. This is the core of the little way spirituality. The disciples often argued about who was the greatest. Jesus taught them about humility many times. One day, he said nothing. He just sat down on the grass and opened his arms. Immediately, a few children playing nearby ran over, climbed into his lap, and rested their heads on his chest. They were completely peaceful and happy to be in that shelter. Jesus looked at his disciples, and his gaze said it all. Then he whispered to Peter, "Peter, why do you want to be great? To stand on your own 2 feet? Look, true greatness is to become small enough to fit in the Father's arms." 65. Fuzzy boundaries of love. The love of adults often has clear boundaries. Family, friends, countrymen. The love of children is diffuse. They can love a dog, a cat, a flower, a stranger, with the same sincerity. The ability to love without distinction, crossing all boundaries, is a reflection of the love of God, who makes his sun rise on the evil and on the good. In the parable of the Good Samaritan, the priest and the Levite passed by the wounded man. They had boundaries. This is not my business. Touching him might make me unclean. The Samaritan did not. He crossed the boundary of ethnic hatred. After telling the parable, Jesus saw a little girl sharing her piece of bread with a stray dog. She didn't think about whether the dog deserved it. She just saw a hungry creature. Jesus said to the teacher of the law, "You ask me who is my neighbor, to define the boundaries of love?" That little girl doesn't ask that question. She just loves. Go and do likewise. Don't draw circles. Break them down. 66. A sense of personal destiny. Children often have very simple yet grand dreams. When I grow up, I'll be a hero. I'll sail a boat to the end of the world. Behind these innocent dreams is a deep sense that they were born to do something special. This is an echo of the unique calling that God has for every soul. Andrew, before meeting Jesus, was a fisherman. But he and his brother John always yearned for something greater, which is why they followed John the Baptist. When Andrew met Jesus, he ran to Simon and said, "We have found the Messiah." He had found the answer to his longing. Jesus looked at Simon and said, "You are Simon, son of John. You will be called Cephas," which means Peter. He confirmed and named his destiny. Later, Jesus told them, "I no longer call you servants. Instead, I have called you friends." He elevated them. He saw in each of them simple fishermen, a great potential, a destiny they themselves did not dare to dream of. Just as a child believes he can become a king. 67. The absence of irony. Irony is a linguistic tool of adults, often used to create distance to hide true feelings or to appear smarter. The language of children is direct and sincere. They say what they mean. In the kingdom of heaven, there is no place for hurtful irony, only for truth spoken in love. When Jesus was hanging on the cross, the passers-by, the chief priests and the scribes mocked him with bitter irony. "He saved others, but he can't save himself. Let him come down now from the cross, and we will believe in him." It was the language of cynicism and cruelty. In contrast was the word of the good thief, "Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom." A direct plea without a hint of irony. And the words of Jesus, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." A word full of truth and love. Later, the disciples understood that the language of the cross was the complete opposite of the language of the world. It was the language of absolute sincerity, like a child saying, "I love you, Mummy." Simple, direct, and with no hidden meaning. 68. The ability to be completely absorbed. When children are interested in something, they can become completely absorbed, forgetting everything around them. This ability to focus and immerse oneself fully in a moment is a form of contemplation, a complete presence to what is. Martha was busy and worried about many things. Mary sat at the Lord's feet and listened to his word. Mary was completely absorbed. Jesus defended her. To illustrate further, he might have seen a boy sitting on the beach, completely mesmerized by watching a snail move. The waves, the passers-by, the calls seemed not to exist for the boy at that moment. He might have said to Martha, "You are trying to do 100 things at once for me. Mary is doing only one thing. Being with me. Look at that boy. He is not trying to observe the whole ocean. He is just with one sail. And in that moment for him, that snail contains the whole ocean. Learn to be absorbed by my presence like that. 69. Not bothered by impressions. Adults act with one eye always on what others think of them. They try to create a good impression. Children act spontaneously. They don't care if others think they are silly or clumsy. This freedom from the burden of having to make an impression is a great liberation. When Zacchaeus, a rich and important man, climbed a sycamore fig tree to see Jesus, he abandoned his dignity and his impression. That act was like the act of a child, and it was that act that caught Jesus' attention. He did not say, "You respectable man, come down." He called him by name. When the disciples wondered why the Lord paid attention to such a seemingly silly act, he said, "People come to me with solemn prayers, with expensive offerings to make an impression. Zacchaeus came to me with an act that disregarded appearances. He became like a child, and therefore he could see the kingdom of heaven." 70. Echoes of the Garden of Eden. In the innocence, the trust, the carefree play of a child, we can hear a distant echo of the Garden of Eden. It is a glimpse of the original state of humanity before division, fear, and sin. To become like children, spiritually, is the journey back to that garden, back to the original, direct, and loving relationship with God. After Adam and Eve sinned, the first thing they felt was naked and afraid, and they hid. The separation had begun. But Jesus, the new Adam, came to restore that relationship. He embraced children, creatures who knew nothing of that shame and fear of nakedness. When the disciples tried to understand the deepest things, Jesus might have looked at them with sad eyes and said, "You are trying to use reason to build a road back to the Garden of Eden. But that gate is not opened by wisdom, it is opened by simplicity. Look at a child sleeping in its mother's arms. No fear, no worry, complete trust. That is not just a beautiful image, it is a reminder. It is where we all began, and it is to where I am inviting you all to return." So our journey through the 70 philosophies of life from Jesus' teaching, "Let the little children come to me," has come to an end. This is not just a journey of words or stories, but a pilgrimage back to the most sacred and pristine temple within each of our souls. Through each philosophy, we have discovered together that the path to the kingdom of heaven is not a path of complexity, of profound knowledge, or of great adult achievements. On the contrary, it is a path of simplicity, of trusting surrender, of the ability to wonder at life, and of a heart open to receive love. The kingdom of heaven is not a reward for the perfection of an adult, but a gift for the openness of a childlike soul. This audio journey may end, but the journey of each of our lives continues. Therefore, this week, Church Audio earnestly invites you to take one small action. Choose one thing in your daily life, maybe a job you dislike, a difficult relationship, or simply a flower by the roadside, and try just once to see it through the eyes of a child. Look at it with curiosity, without judgment, with gratitude and wonder, and see if a miracle happens. Of the 70 philosophies just covered, which one touched you most deeply? What story, image, or truth has stayed in your mind? Please share your thoughts in the comments section below. Every comment you make is a precious brick, building a community of faith and love together. If this journey has brought you peace and a new perspective, please spread it by hitting the like and share buttons to share this video with those you love. And if you are not yet a member of the Church Audio family, please hit subscribe and the bell icon so we don't miss each other on the faith journey ahead. Church Audio sincerely thanks you for listening and for your companionship. May the grace and peace of God, through a simple, childlike soul, be always with you and your family. Goodbye, and see you in the next audios.